Christmas Eve, a time for love, laughter, and, well, apparently murder. For most people, December 24th means wrapping presents, sipping hot cocoa, and pretending to like your in-laws' cooking. But for one Ohio family, the holiday spirit took a darker turn. Because while the rest of the world was celebrating, Brittany Cole was busy playing a deadly game of Guess Who? Except, in this version, the answer was always the father-in-law. You see, Brittany wasn't just a nursing student. She was also a wife, a mother, and, unfortunately for 80-year-old David Cole Sr., an aspiring pharmacist of the most sinister variety. On that fateful night, while families everywhere exchanged heartfelt gifts, Brittany gifted her father-in-law something a little less festive, an overdose of painkillers and ZzzQuil. And here's the kicker. She knew exactly what she was doing. At 9:30 p.m., she handed him the first lethal dose. At 11 p.m., he was still in pain. So, in a moment of true holiday generosity, she gave him more. By sunrise, David Cole Sr. wasn't waking up for Christmas morning. Now, you might think that's where the horror story ends. But oh no, because instead of, calling 911 like any normal person would, Brittany had other plans. She told her family that David Sr. had moved to Cincinnati, as if an 80-year-old man just randomly decides to pack up and leave overnight without so much as a goodbye. And then, brace yourself, Brittany, her husband, and their kids did what any grieving family would do after an unexpected death. They went to Disney World. Yep, while David Sr.'s body lay undiscovered, decomposing in their home, the Coles were off riding roller coasters, snapping family selfies, and probably complaining about the price of theme park food. I mean, talk about priorities. But here's the real question. How do you go from homicide to happiest place on earth without a hint of remorse? And what happens when the lies start unraveling faster than a cheap Christmas sweater? This is a chilling, bizarre, and downright disturbing case of Brittany Cole, a woman who turned Christmas Eve into a crime scene, kept her father-in-law's corpse like an unwanted holiday decoration, and thought she could get away with it. But trust me, she didn't. December 24th, 2024, Zanesville, Ohio. A town where the biggest crime most people expect is a neighbor stealing their Amazon package before Christmas morning. A town where families are gathered around the fire, opening presents and sharing meals. But in one house, nestled on a quiet street, something much darker is happening. Inside this home, an 80-year-old man is sitting in his chair, unaware that the person he trusts, the woman who sits at his dinner table, the woman who married his son, the woman who should be caring for him, is about to become his executioner. Her name? Brittany Cole. Her weapon? Not a gun. Not a knife. Nothing as messy as that. No, Brittany's method of choice was something far more insidious. Because when you're a nursing student, you don't need brute force. You just need a little bit of science and a complete lack of morals. Brittany didn't rush into this. No dramatic confrontation. No sudden outburst of rage. Instead, she did something much colder. She waited. She planned. And when the moment was right, she reached for a little bottle of Tylenol 3, an opioid-based painkiller with codeine. And, for good measure, a hefty dose of ZzzQuil. Because nothing says silent night quite like a medically induced coma. She hands the pills to her father-in-law. He trusts her. Why wouldn't he? She's family. She's in nursing school. She knows what she's doing. And no, she does. David Sr. takes the pills, swallows them down, maybe even thanks her. Maybe he thinks, what a good daughter-in-law, always looking out for me. But this wasn't kindness. This was a slow, calculated execution. And Brittany knew it. At around 9:30 p.m., the poison was in his system. By 11 p.m., he was complaining of pain, disoriented, feeling the first waves of what was happening to his body. And Brittany, she does something that will tell you everything you need to know about the kind of person she is. She gives him more. Not by accident. Not out of ignorance. She gives him a second dose, fully knowing that his frail, elderly body won't survive it. And then she waits. She goes to bed, letting the poison do its work. No second thoughts. No hesitation. And by 5 a.m. on Christmas morning, David Cole Sr. is dead, a life taken, a crime committed, and the woman responsible? She didn't cry. She didn't panic. She didn't even call 911. Instead, she put her next plan into action. Because murder, my friends, was only the beginning. Now, when most people find a dead body in their home, they have a few logical options. Option 1, call the police. Option 2, call an ambulance. Option 3, scream, cry, and question every life choice that brought you to this moment. But Brittany picked option 4, lie. And not just any lie. Not a he passed away in his sleep kind of lie. Not a this was all a tragic accident lie. No, Brittany went for something far more ridiculous. She told her family that David Sr. had moved to Cincinnati. Think about that. A man in his 80s, in poor health, just decided to pack up and leave, without a word, without a bag, without so much as a goodbye hug to his son or grandkids. And the family just went along with it. Brittany's husband, David Jr., didn't question it. The kids didn't ask why Grandpa was suddenly gone. Nobody said, hey, maybe we should check on him. Nobody called. Nobody checked in. And that right there tells you everything you need to know about this family. Now, what do you do when you just committed murder? Your father-in-law's corpse is rotting in a back room, and you need a solid alibi. You go to Disney World. That's right. While David Sr.'s body lay undisturbed, his skin beginning to change, his organs starting to break down, Brittany and her family packed their bags, jumped in the car, and drove off for a week-long Florida vacation. Imagine that. 1 minute, she's orchestrating a cold-blooded murder. The next, she's standing in line for Space Mountain. And the worst part? Nobody noticed. Nobody knew that back in Zanesville, Ohio, an 80-year-old man's body was slowly decomposing in the very house his family once shared with him. Brittany laughed, took photos, spent money, lived like nothing had happened, because in her mind, she had gotten away with it. But what Brittany didn't realize, the smell of death is not so easily ignored. And when they returned home, the lies were about to start unraveling. One by one, every crime has a breaking point. Every murderer, no matter how careful, leaves behind something they can't erase. And for Brittany Cole, that something wasn't a fingerprint. It wasn't a witness. It wasn't even a confession. It was a smell so rancid, so thick, so absolutely impossible to ignore, that no amount of lies, deception, or air freshener could cover it up. Because when you leave a body to rot in a house for weeks, nature has a way of making sure the world knows about it. And on January 1st, 2025, when Brittany Cole and her family returned home from their very necessary Disney vacation, reality came knocking. Now, let's take a moment to appreciate the audacity of the situation. Brittany thought she could leave a corpse sitting in a house for over a week, come back, and just go on like nothing happened, like her father-in-law's decomposing body was just another piece of furniture, like death itself wasn't about to make its presence known. Spoiler alert, it was. The moment the family stepped through the front door, it hit them. Not just a smell. No, that would be putting it lightly. This was a smell. The kind of smell that crawls into your lungs and refuses to leave. The kind that sticks to your clothes, your hair, your very soul. The kind that says, there's a dead body in this house, and no amount of denial is going to change that. Brittany, of course, knew exactly what she was smelling. Her husband, David Jr., maybe he hoped, prayed, that this was just a plumbing issue, or some really, really bad leftovers. But the truth was rotting in the back bedroom. And no matter how much they wanted to ignore it, that wasn't going to be an option. It takes 7 days. 7 days of living in the same house as a decomposing corpse. 7 days of pretending everything is normal. 7 days of avoiding that room. But eventually, curiosity wins over denial. And on January 7th, David Jr. does what should have been done weeks ago. He opens the door. Imagine for a second what he saw. The body of an elderly man, now unrecognizable. Skin turned a sickly shade. eyes sunken, the air thick with decay, a putrid cocktail of death that no human should ever have to breathe in. And what does David Jr. do? Does he call the police? Does he scream, cry, fall to his knees in horror? No, he sends a text message to his wife. And what does Brittany, the mastermind behind this whole disaster, say when she finds out the body has been discovered? Does she panic? Does she break down? Does she show any sign of remorse? Nope. She gives a simple, cold, and horrifying instruction. Wrap him up. And that's exactly what they did. David Jr. and Brittany took a tarp, a mattress bag. They wrapped up the body like it was nothing more than an inconvenience. And then they moved it, first to the sunroom. Then, when that wasn't good enough, to the shed outside. Out of sight, out of mind. Or so they thought. Because here's the thing about murder. It has a way of catching up with you. And Brittany? She was running out of places to hide. They say no crime is perfect. That no matter how careful, how calculated, how cunning a person thinks they are, the truth always finds a way to crawl out of the shadows. And in Brittany Cole's case, that truth didn't just crawl. It busted through the door, flashing neon lights and holding a megaphone. Because if murder was an art, Brittany was a kindergartner with a crayon. But you know what's worse than committing murder? Leaving behind receipts. And Brittany? Oh, she left plenty. You ever hear the phrase, curiosity killed a cat? Well, Google searches tend to kill airtight alibis. Because while most people spent Christmas morning opening gifts, Brittany Cole spent hers typing 6 fateful words into her phone. When someone dies, how long does it take for the body to start smelling? Now let's break that down. It's Christmas. She just happens to be looking up decomposition timelines, not holiday recipes, not where to see Christmas lights, not even a fake search to cover her tracks, like best nursing schools or how to be a good person. Nope, straight to the incriminating stuff. And that was just the beginning. Because when investigators got their hands on Brittany's phone records, it was like opening Pandora's box. Except instead of ancient evils, it was just sheer stupidity. Alongside the Google search, authorities uncovered text messages. And let's just say these were not the kind of texts that age well. One from David Jr., dated January 7th, read, "The smell is getting bad. We need to do something." Oh, you don't say. Another text? A conversation between Brittany and David Jr. about where to dispose of the body. Because, nothing says we're innocent like brainstorming corpse relocation strategies via text message. And if that wasn't enough, there was security footage. Yes, security footage. Video evidence showing David Jr. discovering the body. Video evidence of him texting about it. Video evidence that was just sitting there, waiting for police to find it. Which, of course, they did. Because if there's one thing more predictable than a bad cover-up, it's bad criminals getting caught. Murder is rarely just about rage, or revenge, or convenience. More often than not, it's about money. And Brittany Cole? She was no exception. Because while David Sr. lay rotting in a shed, his bank account, well, that was still very much alive. Investigators quickly discovered that Brittany and her husband had continued cashing David Sr.'s Social Security checks, month after month, spending his money, living off his benefits, as if he were still alive, which, of course, he wasn't. But here's where things get even worse. Brittany and David Jr. didn't just use the money for bills or necessities. No, they used it to fund a vacation. To Orlando. You kill a man. You stash his body in a house. You steal his money. And you reward yourself with a theme park getaway. Detectives piece it all together. The poisoning, the cover-up, the financial fraud. And suddenly Brittany's "we just panic" excuse didn't seem so convincing anymore. Because this wasn't just panic. It was premeditation. And now, it was time to pay the price. The thing about secrets, they never stay buried for long. No matter how deep you shove them, no matter how many lies you stack on top, they always have a way of clawing their way back to the surface. And for Brittany Cole, her darkest secret wasn't just surfacing. It was rotting. Literally. February 10th, 2025. A 911 dispatcher picks up the phone. 911, what's your emergency? A hesitant voice on the other end. Nervous. Uneasy. Yeah. I think there's a dead body in a shed. Not exactly the kind of call you expect to get on a Tuesday morning. Within minutes, Zanesville officers pull up to the address. They step out of their squad cars. And immediately, the stench hits them. Thick, pungent, the kind of smell that sticks to your lungs. They follow it to the shed in the backyard. One officer hesitates, then grips the handle. With one slow, deliberate motion, he pulls the door open. And there, wrapped in layers of tarp and a mattress bag, was David Cole Sr., or at least what was left of him. Brittany Cole wasn't home when police made the discovery, but that didn't last long, because the moment officers knocked on her door, it was game over. She was taken in for questioning, sat in a cold interrogation room, faced with detectives who had a lot of questions. And what did Brittany do? She did what guilty people do best. She lied. I don't know anything about a body. He moved to Cincinnati, remember? This must be a mistake. Oh, Brittany. Sweet, delusional Brittany. Because here's the thing about modern-day crime. You don't just have to outsmart detectives. You have to outsmart technology. And Brittany did not get that memo. Detectives slid a piece of paper across the table. Brittany's eyes darted to it. Her own Google search, printed in bold black letters. When someone dies, how long does it take for the body to start smelling? And just like that, the lie shattered. But wait, there's more. Next, investigators pulled out phone records. Text messages between Brittany and David Jr. Plans to move the body. Concerns about the smell. One detective leaned in. So, you want to try that story again? And that's when Brittany broke. Her voice wavered. Her hands shook. It was just supposed to make him sleep. That was her excuse. That was her defense. But detectives weren't buying it. Because no one takes 2 rounds of prescription-strength narcotics and ZzzQuil. By accident, the confession was written, signed, sealed, delivered, and Brittany Cole's fate was no longer in her hands. February 26, 2025. The courtroom was silent as Brittany Cole stood before the judge. No excuses left. No more lies to tell. Just the cold, hard truth and the consequences that came with it. The verdict? Guilty. Murder and abuse of a corpse. The sentence? Life in prison. With a small sliver of hope, parole eligibility. After 16 years. As for David Jr., his fate was still hanging in the balance. Pending charges. A future uncertain. But one thing was clear. No theme park on earth could erase the nightmare that Brittany Cole had created. Greed. Some say it's just human nature. That deep down, we all want more. More money, more comfort, more security. But most of us don't kill for it. Brittany Cole did. And the worst part? She thought she could get away with it. Brittany Cole was a nursing student. Someone trained to save lives. To protect the vulnerable. To be the kind of person you trust with your loved ones. But instead of using her medical knowledge to help people, she used it to kill. A lethal cocktail of narcotics and ZzzQuil, administered not once, but twice, until her father-in-law took his final breath. And then, instead of guilt, instead of remorse, she packed a suitcase and took off for Disney World. Because nothing screams heartless sociopath like watching fireworks over Cinderella's castle, while your victim's body decomposes back home. Let's talk about the why. Because no matter how twisted, every crime has a motive. For Brittany, it wasn't rage. It wasn't revenge. It was money. Cold, hard cash. She wanted David Cole Sr. gone so she and her husband could keep collecting his Social Security checks. Because to them, his life wasn't worth more than a few government deposits. And that's the chilling part. He wasn't an abusive tyrant. He wasn't some secret monster. He was just inconvenient. And Brittany, she found a way to fix that inconvenience. But for someone so calculated in murder, she was incredibly sloppy in covering it up. Google searches on Christmas morning Text messages about how bad the body smelled, security cameras catching her husband discovering the corpse. It's almost like she wanted to get caught. Or maybe, just maybe, she thought she was smarter than everyone else. That the police wouldn't look. That no one would ask questions. That a lie about moving to Cincinnati was good enough to erase an entire human being. Spoiler alert, it wasn't. And in the end, the stench of her crime was stronger than any excuse she could come up with. One crime, 2 lives destroyed, and a family shattered beyond repair. David Cole Sr. was an elderly man, a father, a grandfather. He should have spent his final years surrounded by family, not wrapped in tarp, stuffed in a shed, and forgotten. Instead of a proper burial, he was left to rot, discarded like trash. And the people responsible, the ones who were supposed to love him, they went on vacation. And now, they're sitting in prison cells. One sentenced to life. The other, still waiting for justice to catch up to him. This case isn't just about murder. It's about betrayal. A woman who took an oath to heal, but chose to harm. A son who ignored the smell of death in his own home, until it became too strong to deny. A family that put money above human life. And the question we're left with? How many other cases like this are out there? How many secrets are still buried, hidden beneath lies, waiting to be uncovered? One thing's for sure. No crime stays buried forever. Not even the ones wrapped in tarp.